Why American bread tastes so weird? Ask me again, I don't know. I'm getting this one from Adventures and Naps. The link will be in the description below. Let's check this one out. But before we do, come on in. You, and everybody. Come on in. Hit the like. Hit the subscribe if you're new here. You won't regret it. And to all my regular schmeglers, day one, city pie, city pools, you know what to do. Rebecca, put a smile on your face and enjoy. And let's chat it up in the comment section below. All right? Thanks for all the well wishes and all the warm thoughts that you sent my way. Araya's eyes are doing amazing. She is just kicking it and relaxing and getting undivided attention from mommy. So you know how it is. But we're going to get right into this one. Love you guys so much. Like I said, thank you guys so much for the warm words. Let's get into this. Let's hear what she has to say. Why American bread tastes so weird.
Hi everyone, it's me. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Alana and I'm a Canadian, but I have been living here in the UK for the last 7 years. And today, I want to talk about bread. So the story goes, recently I went home to Canada. I'm going to put this down. This is going to get distracting. Recently I went home to Canada and my partner and I were having lunch. It's like toast and eggs or something. And we're sitting there and we're eating. And he goes, this doesn't taste right.
Okay.
And I go, are you okay? And he said, why is the bread sweet?
Okay.
My life is now divided into two parts. Before the bread mystery and after. One of the things I love about being a Canadian living here in the UK are taste tests. I love trying British food and British drink and snacks and sweets and traditional stuff and just all of it. I love it. But typically when I go back to Canada, I just eat like whatever my mom eats. Like I just eat some stuff like from childhood.
Yeah, what you used to.
Here. Yeah. Just, you know, I'm not doing anything too adventurous. But I never really noticed anything different per se with the food back in Canada. But ever since he said, is the bread sweet? I can't unsee it. I can't unhear it. I can't untaste it. I was today years old when I learned that sugar is often added to bread made in the US and Canada.
Oh.
But why? Why does the bread need to be sweet? A lot of sources online seem to think that sugar is added to bread in North America to preserve the freshness, add sort of a soft texture, and to add sweetness. I think
so. I was today years old knowing that sugar was added for those reasons. So there she go. But I can understand why, because this is my second time hearing and seeing somebody saying, you know what, American bread ain't bread. It's just not bread. They're rowing bread. So I am here for the comparison here.
The preserved freshness makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I would imagine that bread made in America or Canada has to travel quite far, long distances, at least compared to the UK. So of course you want bread that will last from the creation through the transport to making it to the store and being put up on the shelf. But I also think that North American taste buds have grown accustomed to things that are just slightly more sweet.
True.
I think where you perhaps eat certain things as a child that are quite sweet and you don't know that things have added sugar in them as you get older, your taste buds, I honestly do think, sort of lean towards the sweetness. So you don't even notice that your bread is sweeter than everyone else's bread. True. It just tastes like bread to you. To any non-Americans like my partner eating this bread, it tasted weird and it was noticeable. Now, one thing to know, of course, Canada and the US, two different countries, but a lot of our products, our food is very, very similar. Of course, there are different regulations and perhaps changes in ingredients, but they are very similar. Now, sugar added to bread actually was in the news. I don't know if you guys remember Subway. Do you remember the Subway drama?
Yeah.
Not that drama, the other one. So in Ireland, a judge ordered that Subway bread was not bread at all. This was because the sugar content used in Subway bread was so high that the court ruled it more like confectionery, more like cake than bread. So basically, when you go to Subway and you have your 6-inch, I don't know, cold cuts, maybe meatball sub, you're having a cake sub. During this court battle, of course, Subway is saying, no, it's bread, okay? We checked, it's bread. The court found that a typical Subway 6-inch like sub roll, the bread, had about 6 grams of sugar, which is basically like 2 plain digestive biscuits. Yes, yep. 2 biscuits. So I was reading online. Some people were saying that Americans are more likely to have sweet sandwiches or sandwich spreads. Like peanut butter and jelly is huge in America, and it kind of makes sense to have sweet bread with that, which is a separate tangent. If you are a British person, do you like peanut butter? Leave a comment down below. I was reading that. So first off, did you know that 2 US presidents were peanut farmers?
No.
Incredible. Now, this statistic is from 2017, and it said that in the US, around 90% of households eat peanut butter. In the UK, for comparison, we were about 40%. So not nothing, but certainly not super popular. But on the thread of like Americans like sweet spreads or sweet sandwiches, and British people, that always kind of freaks me out. And British people are more likely to have savory spreads. I certainly think there is some truth to that. At Tesco, they certainly sell peanut butter, crunchy peanut butter, smooth peanut butter, organic peanut butter, but they do sell Marmite, which is probably the most savory spread in existence. So that actually kind of checks out. However, they also sell sweet spreads. Marmite, is there anything more British? Paddington, is there anything more British? So I got this Frank Cooper's Oxford marmalade. How absolutely gorgeous is that? I've never had it. So here we are. And I'm going to claim this as a tax write-off. This toaster only got half of my bread. It's fine. So I do think there is some truth to Americans more likely to have a sweet spread. A lot of Americans like peanut butter and jelly. Brits consume Marmite, which is the most savory thing in the world. However, we do have a lot of sweet spreads like Marmite, not Marmite, like what's the word? Marmalade?
Oh, okay.
Did I just have a stroke? Cheers. Maybe this is just the rest of the video, me eating marmalade. Now,
See, I can understand what she's saying. When you grow up certain place, you get used to that kind of food. So your palate is more familiar. And you wouldn't notice that when you go somewhere else and say, you try bread somewhere else and it doesn't taste like it's going to taste weird. Because when I came here from Jamaica and started eating bread, I could taste the difference. I was like, okay now. And then the flimsiness of the bread was like, oh, wow. And I'm like, okay. Even the chicken, it doesn't matter what I tasted after I left Jamaica and came here. My palate could tell the difference between everything that I put in my mouth that was American than what I used to eat in Jamaica. And in my eyes, what I ate in Jamaica was way better than what I ate here, that I started eating here in America. So I see where she's coming from, and I can see why her spouse would have tell the difference in trying bread when he went to Canada with her than the bread that he's familiar with in the UK.
While I was in Canada, I have to admit, I've never looked at the nutritional labels on bread before. It's just not something that I concern myself with.
Majority of Americans don't.
While we were having lunch, I pulled out some of the bread products that we had in the house, like in the cupboard right then and there. One of them, of course, where everything bagels. I love a good bagel. I know you guys make fun of how I say that.
Bagel.
Just let's move on. It's so hard to get everything bagels here in the UK. So every time I go home, I always have a couple. So I was just curious. So in these particular bagels, per one bagel, there were 2 grams of sugar.
There you have it.
When I looked at the nutritional label, like the actual ingredients label, the order of ingredients were enriched wheat flour, water, and number 3 was sugar. The other type of bread we had was my mom's like ancient grains type bread. So this is what I would consider to be a healthy looking bread, right? It's brown. It's got stuff in it. It must be good for you. So for 2 slices of this bread, so you're making a sandwich perhaps, for 2 slices, it has 5 grams of sugar, which I found very surprising. And when I looked at the ingredients in the order that they were written, so number 1, we have whole grain wheat flour, then we have water, then we have the whole grains and seeds mix. So there's like a bunch of different seeds. And then number 4 was sugar. Now, while I didn't have it in the cupboard, I wanted to check Wonder Bread. How did that compare? So the Wonder Bread in Canada for 2 slices had 3 grams of sugar, which surprised me because it is less than the one with all the seeds in it. And like the other breads, I looked at the ingredients list, and this of course is the enriched wheat flour, water, sugar. So they are sort of forming a pattern, if you will. Now, I was curious if the Wonder Bread in America was made different. So I went onto Walmart USA. I just pretended that I was in California and I had a look. And for 2 slices, it was 5 grams of sugar. More than Canada. Now, there is a type of bread called sweet Hawaiian.
Oh, that's a good one.
Please, British people, have you ever had this? Have you ever seen it in the UK? To be honest, I bet you it's banned because it's so sweet. But it is still labeled as bread in North America. Or you can get it as like rolls, like buns, but it is still considered like a bread product. But to be honest, you guys would probably hate it. So to make a sandwich with Pepperidge Farms sweet Hawaiian bread. Now, Pepperidge Farms is a large, very large brand. You might even recognize it. They do all sorts of stuff. To make a sandwich, okay, how many grams of sugar?
7.
Did you guess? 12. And this label actually specifies for 2 slices, there are 12 grams of sugar with 10 grams being added sugar. So one would imagine 2 grams are like naturally produced sugar in terms of like the ingredients and whatever, but then 10 grams of added sugar. Now, 1 slice of this sweet Hawaiian bread, just 1 slice, half a sandwich. We're not even talking about the innards of the sandwich yet. Just 1 slice is about the same amount of sugar as 1 Jaffa cake. Yes, a cake. 1 whole one, chocolate covered. So what about British bread? How does British...
Jeez, the Hawaiian bread, yeah, I know. My kids like the roll. I don't really fancy it. It is too sweet. And I realize a lot of Americans gravitate towards the bread, that Hawaiian bread. It's always on the dinner roll. It's always on their table. It's always in their houses. The other day, my son asked me to buy it. I'm like, do you eat this stuff? He's like, yeah, I had it at school. I'm like, okay, I bought it. I'm like, let me try it again. After all these years, I tried it before. Let me see if my mind changed about it. And I tried it and I was like, no, ain't for me. It's just too sweet and it's too airy. And it's like I'm eating sponge. Majority of the bread here is the same thing. It's like I'm eating sponge. So, yeesh. I am surprised though that the bread has 12 grams. Ooh, that's a lot. Yeesh.
British bread compare? Well, just in terms of taste, British bread, that's difficult to say, is typically far less sweet tasting. It just tastes like bread. And the biggest difference I have found in my non-professional research, the difference between sugar and added sugar. So the majority of sliced white bread in the UK has no added sugars.
Oh.
There may be naturally occurring sugars. So I wrote this down. During the bread making process, some of the starch in wheat flour is broken down into simple sugars, but this is typically used during the yeast. No, typically used by the yeast during fermentation, and very little remains in the actual finished bread. Most UK sliced bread or wrapped bread falls under the category of low sugar foods. So this means it has to have less than 5 grams of sugar per 100 grams.
Okay.
And when you see the little, where is it? The little like nutritional chart on the front, the sugar will be green because it is considered, most bread in the UK is considered low sugar food. Now, if there are typically no added sugars, why include sugar here in the first place? This figure relates to the total amount of sugar in the product, which will include naturally occurring sugars and potentially added sugar. So for our Kingsmill 50/50, this is like a pretty well-known bread, I would assume. For any North Americans, do you guys have something like this? So it is a soft white bread, but with hidden whole grain, no bits. So if we look at the nutritional, what do you call this? The nutritional reference guide? I don't know. Each slice contains 1.4 grams of sugar. Compare that with the ancient grains bread that we had at home in Canada. One slice of that was 2.5 grams. This one slice is 1.4. And if we look at the ingredients list, so for the breads that I was looking at, the ones with the seeds, my bagels, Wonder Bread, all that kind of stuff, sugar was typically the third or the fourth ingredient. On here, we have wheat flour, wholemeal wheat flour, water, yeast, salt, vegetable oils, blah, 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 sustainable soy flour, and then it goes on into like the less and less. So sugar is not listed here. I also had a look at some bread in Tesco. So for the Tesco white bread, perhaps that's the one that you buy, one slice is 1.5 grams of sugar. So if you are making a sandwich, you're looking at about 3 grams of sugar, which actually is the same as Wonder Bread in Canada. But not the US. The US has more sugar. I also looked at Warburton's. I can never say that properly. Warburton's, their farmhouse loaf. So on the front, it says per slice is 0.9 grams of sugar. So if you are making a sandwich, you're looking at 1.8 grams. But why would there be added sugars in the UK? So online, it seems that if sugar is added in small amounts, it's usually when they're trying to sort of compensate the bitter notes of wholemeal or like seeded breads. Where sugar is added, which is very important. Next time, go to the supermarket, look at the bread that you normally buy. Where sugar is added, it has to be clearly listed in the nutritional label, in the ingredients list. To compare to my mom's like seeded bread back home, I found that Hovis now does this sunflower and pumpkin seed loaf, and each slice contains 1.3 grams of sugar. So 1.3 versus the 2.5 grams of sugar in the seeded loaf back home. So even comparing seeded loaves, where perhaps they want a little bit of sugar just to kind of help with bitterness, Canada is still quite a bit higher. I also saw this abomination, which is not related to this video whatsoever. They're making loaves with no crust. I'm sorry, what? I would also argue that it is really easy here in the UK and a lot of Europe as a whole to go to a bakery and get bread. That's it. Or even going to supermarkets that have a really lovely bakery section where there are lots of loaves that are reasonably priced, whether they're whole things, they're sliced, they're baguettes, whatever. I just feel from my own perception, it's so much easier to get bakery style, beautiful, lovely loaves compared to North America.
That's true.
My humble opinion. For comparison, back home, I have never walked to a bakery. That's first off, but I've also never driven the extra distance to go to a bakery specifically to get bread. It's not convenient. I've just never done it. Whereas here, I have very happily walked to bakeries or walked to the supermarket and gone to the bakery section to buy a beautiful loaf, a lovely baguette. It's a real privilege. So what's the point? What's the point of this video? That's a good question. I think this little experiment has opened my eyes to the concept of added sugar in places that I would not have expected it. I didn't know that typically bread in North America is sweeter. I didn't know that a lot of breads in North America have added sugar. They've got sugar right on the label. The third ingredient, that is not something that has ever come up in my life or in my experiences. I just didn't know. And it's definitely something that I can't unknow it now. Do you know what I mean? Like when I go home and I'm looking to buy some bread, it is something that I would consider. Now, where I eat American bread so infrequently, in the grand scheme of my life, it probably doesn't matter. But what about my friends and family back home who are stuck with breads that just have higher sugar, whether they want it or not? Now, thankfully, it does seem that in Canada, we are more likely to have lower amounts of sugar than our neighbors to the south. But all my friends and family in America, like that sucks. You're stuck consuming bread with sugar that you didn't even ask for. And it certainly helps me appreciate bread and the accessibility of bread and the cost of a good loaf here in the UK, because it is definitely something that is a privilege and it is something that I am very grateful for. So the next time you make a sandwich, have a look at your bread. You might be surprised. If you would like to watch more videos, which would be totally awesome, check out this one.
I gotta be honest, this one have me thinking. So I'm going to have to go into my pantry and look at my bread, because I honestly did not know that so much sugar is being added to this bread. I did not. And if I did not sit here and watch this video, I wouldn't have known. That's the crazy part of it. And it's sad that's the case. But like she said, who is going to stop to notice that thing? You grow up here, you're used to a certain things. You don't see your parents checking it. You don't stop to check it. The only persons I think that would stop to check the bread content, the sugar content, or certain things in their when they're buying groceries are the persons who are on a health journey, a health conscious. Apart from that, ain't nobody really checking if bread has sugar or any added sugars. I did not. So now I'm going to have to go into my pantry, look at all the breads that I have, the different kind of breads that I have in there. And these wheat bread are these 12 grain breads that I'm buying, that I'm thinking that it's the healthier bread, because we don't eat white bread in this house. Now I'm going to have to check to see how much added sugar is in. And when I go to the supermarket, now I can't unsee this, like she said. Now it's going to be in the back of my head, because I thought in my heart of heart that I'm eating the healthiest bread off the shelf, to be honest with you guys. So here we go, another one. It was good watching this bread to get the insight on what's going on. I don't even know why I chose this video. It just, why America bread tastes so weird. I don't know. It just grabs my interest. But it's the island girl, and I'm running out of here. Man, it's always something. Yeah. Love you guys to the max. Don't forget to go in the comment section. Tell me what you'd like me to check out next. Your girl got you. Be good, be kind, be safe. Love each other. And don't forget to hit the thumbs up button. Guys, free. Leave your requests in the comment section. Hit the subscribe if you haven't already. And what else? The P.O. box is in the description below. Love you guys, and I'll see you guys in another one. Bye.